Hi, good afternoon. I just came in again from doing yard work, and I think today I'm going to have a really interesting topic. How about today we discover what we're actually living in? Is it a round Earth, or is it a flat disc world, or is it something else altogether? So that's what our topic's going to be today. So hang on to your hats, because it's going to get a little bumpy on this one too. Okay, first off, I go to this one program, and I always watch him. His name is Martin, and he does Flat Earth British, and he's always talking about his mud floods and the resets of civilizations. And I find it very interesting because in order for me to go look at things, I have to have questions posed so I can go look, because I don't think of everything to look at. So when I came across him, it's like, oh, I'll start looking into this. And so I did. And what I found was quite interesting. Okay, so here we go. First off, we're in a matrix. And in the matrix, everything is created with our belief system. We're actually creating our matrix. But we're not the only ones. This matrix has been around for a long time, and it was created a long time ago. And we are fed new things to try to recreate the matrix. But there's such an old belief system going on that old matrix is still holding its, I just call it its reality. So let's go look at what we're actually in. From what I have seen, we are not in completely either one of them, but both of them. A round ball and a flat disc. And this is how it works. First off, let's start at the outside. On the outside of this entire thing is a huge toroidal field. You can call it the Van Allen belt. A toroidal field is actually being produced by negative and positive energy running. But it actually runs like this inside of this thing we're in. Let's just call it big toroidal field. Okay? So this is creating the outer toroidal field. Okay? Next thing is, when you look down in, or even straight on, we're kind of shaped like an eyeball, the top of an eyeball. And then underneath is kind of like this. This is with an eyeball. And this is the whole landmass with a huge toroidal field over it. But now here's where it gets really interesting. Where we are located on that, if you flipped it over, it's kind of like a disc world, except it's got a bottom to it. We're in the middle of it, the very middle, because there's actually a toroidal field around us. We would consider that our Earth, except we're not a ball. We're in a small piece of the bigger Earth. Yeah, let's call it that. And we're in the middle. And then there's another one. And then there's even another one. But if you looked at it without the toroidal fields, it'd be one big landmass. We are the smallest part of it. So that's interesting, knowing that we are only in a small part of the bigger Earth. Now, here's another thing. Before we go any further in that subject, what do you think is outside of the toroidal field around all of this? Water. Salt water. You've always been told space is a vacuum. No, it's not. Space, from what I'm seeing, is salt water. Yeah, how would you ever guess? As above, so below. You wonder where they come up with these things, because they're true. So basically, these toroidal fields, these domes, are protecting us from being squashed out with water. This was all artificially designed anyway. And don't forget, we're still in the matrix. Woo, it's pretty deep, huh? So let's get to the next thing. Aliens. Things like this. Where do you think they come from? And let's categorize these, because there's actually different types. Let's call the ones that are having the physical bodies, let's call them extraterrestrials, which means extra land. They're coming from the bigger Earth. They're here with us. Of course they are. And why they're here inside of our little piece too is because they've been here too. So these aliens are actually from the bigger Earth. Bet you didn't know that one. Now, there are beings that are from outside in the salted water, and they don't carry physical bodies. And yes, there are beings outside of there too, because in the end, we are just energy beings. Yes, and they're just not residing in a physical body. Some of them kind of look like they have a wispy kind of a body, but it's still an energy being. It's not solid like this. Like I said, solidity was our biggest achievement because we're not solid. But yeah, so think of extraterrestrials from extra land, from the bigger Earth. Yeah, that kind of changes everything. Oh, they're coming from this world and that world. No, they're not. They're coming from the bigger land. And the thing of it is, a lot of the people who work for the government have also been lied to by letting them think that and believe that they're in outer space. No, they're on the bigger Earth. Yeah, I shouldn't really be laughing, but I find it hilarious because the lies are thick and deep. So then you have to ask, if they're outside of our toroidal field, if it's water, how are there asteroids coming in and then killing the dinosaurs and doing all this stuff? Because it's not asteroids, it's other things that are in the air that are coming down. Sometimes they're craft, sometimes there are things thrown at us to create devastation. But as far as asteroids, the whole thing is BS. And then going to places like Saturn and Mars, that's on the bigger Earth. That's all on the bigger Earth. Those places are real, but they're on the bigger Earth. They're not out there billions of miles away. No, they're not. So there are things out there, but a lot of stuff that we've been told is actually just outside of us, outside of our field of reality, outside of our dome. So also there are beings that live inside that big piece of land, I don't know what you call it. There's things in the crust. We're even in the crust. And then there's things toward the middle. There's an opening in Antarctica. One is to go outside of the toroidal field, and the other one is to go into the deeper Earth. But there are entrances everywhere inside of this concentric little area where we could go into the land, the Earth. So now we're going to talk about mud floods. I want to go into a little bit of detail of how these resets for these civilizations were caused by these mud floods. Inside of this landmass, there are caverns that go to outside of this dome, and there are oceans out there, and there are like doorways that were made. You can just call them like if you were going to make a dam. And at given points, these other beings had created the malevolent ones, not the good ones, to flood out the world that we live in. That's why we have epicenters underneath the ocean where you can see things were built. It's point blank in your face, and you're like, how did it get under the ocean? It's because these floodgates were opened and these mud floods were allowed to happen so they could get rid of civilizations and then do a reset and start over. So all of these, the reason the water came in to begin with is because it was allowed in. And it was all manipulated and maneuvered, where at one point there wouldn't have been some of these caving systems. Some of them are natural, but most of them are not. They were created to flood this whole center piece out if need be for whatever somebody's evil agenda might be. So that's where the Noah's flood came in and all these other floods came in, because before we actually resided here as we are in our state, the energy beings resided in an ammonia silicon world. And ammonia doesn't mix. I mean, it looks like water, but it's not. It doesn't mix with water. And if you put the ammonia and the water together with other elements, it can instantly petrify anything. So that's why you're finding footprints and huge footprints, as big as I am, bigger. And you're finding, it looks like chopped off trees, and there were mountains. And because at one point, this snow globe, that's why I call it a snow globe, because of the toroidal field and where we are in the middle, had a different kind of life in it. It wasn't carbon based. It was something else. It was on the opposite end, whatever. And in order to get rid of that, they went ahead and flooded it out, petrified everything, and restarted with carbon-based, and that's us. They couldn't control these big beings, so they needed to get rid of them, and that's exactly what they did. And think how cruel and heartless that these beings are if you can get rid of an entire species of humanoids, but on top of that, everything that lives in the ecosystem, all the animals, all the vegetation, blah, 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 and it just keeps going down the list. We do have a few remnants left over from the silicon ammonia world, and that would be crystals. You'll notice that crystals continue to grow, and there are some rocks that continue to grow. That's because that's the world, the first world that was here before we were put here. So that's a very interesting subject too. But as far as the mud floods go, they just open up the floodgates from the bigger earth and they flood the reality. And it's just terrible. It's terrible. So this is why it was actually done. And it's been going for a long time. So hopefully that will be nipped in the bud by the beings that are manipulating and using us as a workforce, which is another thing. One of the main reasons that we are here is to produce. We're good at making things. And so think about all the things that get manufactured in a year from every walk of life. You think that we're just the only ones using all of this? No, we're not. It's going to the bigger earth. And at that point, that's why work is the only thing that matters. You work, you work, you work. Your family doesn't matter. Your children don't matter. You don't matter. What you produce is the only thing that matters. And we'll throw crumbs at you to make you work just so you can eke through an existence, and you'll never own anything. But because the moment you start owning anything and you start doing anything where you don't need to rely on a job, we can't have that, because the only reason we want you is to produce for us out here. Yeah, it's really screwed up. So basically it's just the way it is. It's horrible, but it needs to change, and it's starting to change. With our DNA activation, that is also going to change, because everyone is going to end up knowing, because when you start having your DNA activation, all of a sudden the thick haze and the malaise of your reality start to lift, and you start seeing everything for what it really is. And it's like, whoa, hold on. I didn't agree to this. That's not why I'm here. So I guess I could talk more about energy, and energy is everything. I mean, it's absolutely everything. Everyone thinks about, we have like protons and neutrons and all this other crap, but it's not true. It's actually energy. And thought pushes into energy, which pushes into frequency, and then pushes into a reality. So, but it's very interesting about the reality we're actually living in. I would love to go physically, who knows, I just have to do it mentally, to the bigger earth and see all the diversity of life, because there's a lot of diversity, or even into the inside of the earth, and there's big diversity there too. So basically that's how the mud floods are done, and that's what we're living on. So we're living in a toroidal field in salt water, which is kind of shaped like an eye on the top, the bigger earth, and us in there too, with a piece on the bottom. And we've got energy running up and down, and basically it's negative and positive, creating these fields, which is the grid of also above us, which is why the pyramids were built to begin with, because they tap into the grid naturally. Because in our, even the bigger earth, it's like this everywhere. In our small little space, which we call our earth, we have natural centers, energy centers that go up and down, and it's the same kind of concept. And you'll find that in these gridding systems, that's where energy can pulse or ebb or whatever. And it goes up or down, and you can actually utilize this and have free energy for the world if you knew how to do it. Because at one point with the pyramids, that was a free energy source. And of course that got shut down immediately because we need to control you so you can produce things for us. It's horrible, just horrible. And enslave you. So, and feed off of you. Oh, it's terrible. So, I guess I'll stop there, and because this video is going to be really long, and I'll see everybody on another video. Bye.